After 12 years of ICU night shifts in Vancouver, I can tell the difference between actual danger and background noise. You learn to categorize everything. Respond immediately or let it go. That Thanksgiving at my parents' house in Spokane didn't seem unusual at first. Just another holiday wrapped in the comfortable chaos of aging parents. Their house is one of those old two-story builds from the 1940s. Constructed before proper insulation existed. Pipes rattle. Floorboards announce every footstep. And the basement carries a perpetual smell of damp cardboard mixed with ancient laundry detergent. My parents use it like extended storage. Cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling, a chest freezer that hums like an old refrigerator, and a furnace that's been threatening retirement for a decade. I'd come home because Dad's blood pressure had been trending upward, and Mom had no business climbing step stools to retrieve the good china. I slipped back into caretaker mode easily, checking Dad's medications, convincing Mom the stuffing was perfect as is, watching the turkey timer like it was monitoring a critical patient. Everything felt normal until the basement light turned itself on. We were halfway through dinner when I noticed a thin strip of yellow light bleeding from beneath the basement door. We never leave that light on. The pull chain bulb down there costs money, and my parents are religious about turning it off. Must have grabbed something earlier, Dad said, waving his fork dismissively. Forgot to pull the chain. I stood and cracked the basement door, just wide enough to peer down the wooden stairs. The bulb glowed steadily, and the pull chain was swaying slightly, like someone had tugged at moments before. No footsteps, no voices, nobody visible down there. I shut the door, told myself the chain probably moved when I opened the door, and returned to the table. An hour later, the light was on again. This time, nobody had been near that door. We'd all been in the living room, debating whether the Macy's parade floats counted as legitimate Thanksgiving tradition or just background television noise. The swing in the chain was more pronounced now, a definite arc, still slowing down. I descended halfway and pulled the chain myself, watching the light click off. No flicker, no loose connection, nothing unusual. Upstairs, I noticed a small smudge near the doorknob, muddy residue, the kind you track in after walking through wet earth. I rubbed it with my thumb. Fresh. Probably came in on Dad's shoes earlier, I reasoned, though I'd watched him remove his boots at the door like he always does. During dessert, a metallic clank echoed up through the floorboards, something brushing against the furnace ducting. Mom paused mid-sentence. Even Dad raised an eyebrow. Then they laughed. Old house, Dad said with a shrug. Sure, but old houses don't operate their own light switches. When my parents settled into the living room for post-meal naps, I stood by the basement door for a long moment, listening. I don't scare easily, you can in my profession. But that house felt too quiet, the light too insistent, and those noises felt deliberate. I grabbed a flashlight, opened the door, and started down the wooden stairs. Each step creaked with that particular sound that becomes part of your DNA when you grow up hearing it. Halfway down, the temperature dropped noticeably. Basement air hit me. Cooler, heavier, laden with moisture. My flashlight beam found a pull chain first. It was swinging again, not wildly, but with enough momentum that it hadn't begun slowing yet, as if someone had just released it and melted into the shadows. I scanned the room. The ancient freezer hummed in the corner. Boxes lined metal shelving units. A laundry basket waited for wash day. Everything appeared normal except the floor. Fresh mud tracked across the concrete. Dark, wet, unmistakable. Not smudges, footprints, leading from the small basement window on the south side of the house. The one near the driveway. The prints went straight toward the furnace, then stopped behind it. I stepped quietly, angling my flashlight around the furnace's sides. Behind it, tucked into the narrow gap where Dad kept old paint cans, sat a bent window screen. The window above hung slightly open, latch undone. Someone had crawled in. My arms tingled, adrenaline finally catching up after my brain had tried too long to rationalize everything. Someone had been down here, might still be down here, had been down here for hours, maybe, and the light turning on wasn't some electrical glitch. It was someone moving around, listening to us through the heating vents. I went upstairs and locked the basement door behind me. Didn't explain the details to my parents. Just said they needed to go upstairs now, firmly enough that they didn't argue. Then I called the non-emergency line. Police arrived within 15 minutes. They swept the house, checked outside, followed the muddy prints to the window. Whoever was had come and gone multiple times. The officer suggested it might have been someone transient, using the basement when my parents were out grocery shopping, then slipping back in when they saw the car return. Maybe. Nobody found the person. Nobody explained everything definitively. Dad had a metal security bar installed on the basement window. The next day, new locks throughout the house. 2. Mom insists it'll become one of those stories we laugh about next Thanksgiving. But I keep replaying one detail. Those footprints weren't wandering. They weren't exploratory. They walked in a perfectly straight line toward the furnace, the ideal hiding place, tucked in darkness, while our voices drifted down to the heating vents. They stood there long enough to listen to us moving around, long enough to decide what they wanted to do next. Thanksgiving at our house in Tacoma was supposed to be simple that year. No drama, no traveling, no extensive guest list. Just me, my wife Erin, our 7-year-old son Liam, and my younger brother Derek. Turkey, football, jokes that were only funny because we were exhausted from cooking. Honestly, I was looking forward to it. Outside, the storm had been raging for hours. Classic Pacific Northwest weather. Wine hammering the vinyl siding. Rain pelting the windows hard enough that individual drops sounded like pebbles. Branches scraping the roof like skeletal fingers. Inside, everything felt warm and ordinary. The Macy's parade replayed on TV. The oven door kept fogging up. The house smelled like rosemary and melted butter. We were halfway through dinner, still giving the turkey side-eye for being too dry, when the storm decided to escalate. A flash lit up the entire dining room like a camera flash. 1 second later, something cracked nearby, loud enough to vibrate the table, and the entire house went dead. TV gone. Refrigerator silent. Overhead lights, nothing. Only the candles on the table stayed alive. Cool, Liam whispered. Erin said something that definitely wasn't cool. Derek laughed like this was all part of the plan. Welcome to rustic Thanksgiving. I grabbed the old flashlight from the junk drawer and headed for the breaker panel. Everything looked normal. No blown fuses. Just a storm killing power up and down the street. Through the front window, every other house on the block sat in darkness. No porch lights, no holiday decorations, just shadow. I headed back toward the dining room, and that's when I saw it. Our sliding glass door takes up almost an entire back wall. At night, it becomes essentially a giant mirror. But near the bottom corner, there was a small foggy patch on the outside of glass, like someone had leaned close and breathed on it. I wiped it with my sleeve. It smeared exactly like breath condensation would. Dog must have been here, I said, though even I didn't believe it. Cooper had been locked in our bedroom all evening because he begged too aggressively during dinner. Cooper's in the bedroom. Aaron reminded me from behind. I didn't answer. I returned to the table. We tried to keep the mood light. Candlelit Thanksgiving, kind of cozy, right? But the storm felt louder now, like the darkness outside had physical weight. Then we heard the sound. Soft, close, coming from the direction of the sliding door. It wasn't wind and it wasn't rain. It was subtler. Everyone stopped talking. Liam looked up, eyes wide. Derek frowned, trying to act braver than he felt. Was that? Aaron whispered. I grabbed the flashlight again and walked toward the door slowly. The candlelight behind me made my reflection stretch across the glass, but the foggy patch was already returning, bigger this time, slow, expanding, exactly like someone standing inches away, breathing out. I stopped a foot from the curtain. Don't open anything, Aaron said. I didn't plan on it. I just wanted to know what was out there. I held the flashlight down at my leg, so I wouldn't blind myself in the reflection, then lifted the curtain with 2 fingers and flicked the light upward. The beam hit a face, a real face, right on the other side of the glass. Pale skin reflecting the light, dark knit-cap, eyes squinting against the flashlight beam. No surprise in that expression, just a flat, almost annoyed look, like I'd turned on a bedroom light too early in the morning. The face jerked back and disappeared into the black yard, so fast the fog on the glass distorted as it moved. I dropped the curtain and locked the door in the same motion. Aaron grabbed Liam. Derek started checking the hallway like he expected someone at every window. I dialed 911. My voice came out tighter than I wanted, explaining that someone had been standing directly against our sliding door, watching us. The dispatcher said calls were backed up because of the storm, but they'd send someone as soon as possible. She told me not to go outside. I didn't need the reminder. We gathered in the living room with the candles, all of us listening for anything. Footsteps on the deck, the scrape of someone testing a window, anything that didn't match the storm pattern. Even Cooper was silent behind the bedroom door. Every minute stretched like 10. By the time the officers knocked, the storm had eased, but the house still felt wrong, like all the warmth we built earlier had been sucked out through the walls. 2 cops with flashlights walked the perimeter. I watched from inside as beams of light swept across the backyard. Here, one of them called. He was crouched right at the sliding door, aiming his flashlight down. Shoe prints in the mud. Deep ones right up against the glass. Not 1 or 2, but a trail, pacing back and forth along the door, then leading to the kitchen window like the person had been checking for entry points. The officer came inside. Storm like this knocks out power. People start checking houses. Some are just looking for quick opportunities. Looks like you startled him before he tried anything. That landed wrong. Didn't make me feel safer at all. They took a report. Told us to keep everything locked. Said they'd patrol the block again before finishing their shift. By then, the candles were burning low and Liam had fallen asleep against Aaron. When they left, The house felt too dark and too quiet. The next morning, I went out to look again with real daylight. The prints were clearer, average size, cheap boot tread pattern, nothing distinctive. But when I stepped back inside and really examined the sliding door, I saw something I'd missed in the darkness. 2 faint smudges, exactly at the height of that foggy patch. Not fingerprints, not a handprint, lip marks. Someone had pressed their mouth against the glass, leaning in, testing how quietly they could breathe on it without alerting us. I installed a thick wooden security bar in the track that same day. Motion lights, a camera, all before cleaning the dishes from Thanksgiving. And now, every time we lose power, even if it's just for a split second, I automatically turn toward that sliding door, expecting a face to already be there, watching, breathing, waiting for us to get distracted again. I drove into Cleveland that Thanksgiving thinking the worst thing I'd have to deal with was my dad's football commentary and my mom asking why I never visit enough. I live a couple hours away now, outside Toledo. I work construction. Long days and holidays sneak up on me. Still, I brought a store-bought pie and made the familiar drive back to the split-level house I grew up in. The one with the same sagging gutter and the same mailbox that's been hit by the snowplow 3 winters running. Inside, the place was loud in that old comforting way. My sister yelling at her kids. My brother raiding the turkey skin before dinner was officially served. My mom acting like she was running a Michelin star kitchen. And my dad complaining about modern football ruining the game. I put my bag in the hall, kissed my mom, and got handed a carving knife before I could remove my coat. It felt like being 13 again, in a good way. After dinner, huge, chaotic, loud, my mom made her annual push for me to stay the night instead of driving back tired. "Don't argue," she said, pointing with a wooden spoon. "Guest rooms made up." She wasn't wrong. I was exhausted. I'd finished drywall on a job that morning before heading over, and every joint in my back was reminding me I'm not 20 anymore. So I agreed. One night wouldn't kill me. The guest room sits at the end of the hall. Same room that used to be mine before my parents converted it to storage and later into guest space. Same old dresser. Same squeaky window. Same view of the side yard where the neighbor's fence leans in like it's tired too. When I went in, I noticed the old door still had that loose latch. It won't stay shut unless you give it an extra push. I shoved it until I heard the little click, changed into sweatpants, and collapsed onto the bed. I must have fallen asleep fast. The first time I woke up, it was a faint creak in the hallway, light, like someone stepping on a familiar floorboard. I assumed it was Dad going to the bathroom, rolled over, and went back out. The second time I woke up, it wasn't because of the sound. It was the feeling. The air in the room felt heavier, like someone else was occupying it. I kept still, let my eyes adjust. The room was dim, just a little streetlight glow leaking through the curtains. That's when I saw the guest room door. Open, enough to see a few inches of the hallway. Enough to see that I definitely hadn't closed it like I thought. I told myself I must have been too tired and hadn't latched it properly. That happens, but that didn't explain what I heard next. Breathing, not mine, not the slow, even breathing of someone asleep. This was close, low, coming from the foot of the bed. I can't see much past my nose without my glasses, and it was nearly pitch black. I stiffened without meaning to. Contractors know house noises. Vents, pipes, settling beams. You learn what's normal. This wasn't normal. This was the sound of a person trying to be quiet and not quite managing it. I stayed still for a long minute. The breathing got slightly louder. Then something else happened. The mattress dipped. Just slightly. Just enough that I felt the blanket pulled toward the bottom of the bed. Like someone had put their weight there. I kept my eyes trained on the foot of the bed. There was a shape, dark, crouched or hunched. Not defined enough to see features, but enough that I knew I wasn't imagining it. It was a person, sitting there. "Dad," I whispered. The breathing hitched, but there was no answer. Whatever was at the end of the bed wasn't my father. I moved my hand slowly toward the nightstand. I knew exactly where the lamp was. I'd set my phone next to it earlier. I felt for the metal base, and the breathing changed as soon as my fingers brushed it. Like whoever was sitting there knew what I was about to do. I grabbed the switch and snapped the lamp on. The room lit up instantly. The foot of the bed was empty, but the mattress was still indented. A clean depression in the blanket, like someone heavy had just been sitting there and stood up a second before the light hit. The door was now fully open, revealing the dark hallway. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, staring at the dip in the mattress. Try and make sense of it. I'm not the type who jumps to ghosts or supernatural explanations. If something doesn't make sense, I assume there's a logical reason. But every logical reason led back to something I really didn't like thinking about. Someone had been in that room. I finally stood and checked the closet. Empty. Checked under the bed. Empty. Behind the door. Empty. Then I looked toward the window. The frame didn't look right. The bottom was pushed open just slightly, maybe half an inch. Enough to break the latch. Enough that if someone forced it, it would give. I stepped closer and saw a faint brown smear on the sill. Mud. A streak, like someone's pant leg or shoe had brushed it climbing in or out. That was enough for me. I grabbed my bag, turned off the lamp, and walked straight downstairs. I lay on the living room couch with the TV on mute until morning. I didn't sleep. I just waited. When my mom found me, she asked why I didn't use the bed. "Back hurt," I said. It was true, just not for the reason she thought. Later, when we were packing leftovers and bundling jackets, I went back upstairs once more to double check. The window was still cracked. The muddy streak was still on the sill. I locked the window properly, came downstairs, and told my parents they should get the locks checked and stop leaving the side gate open. "Why?" "Something happened," my dad asked. "Nothing major," I said. "Just old house. Easy target." I didn't tell them about the breathing or the shape at the foot of the bed or how long I lay there listening to someone else's air fill the room. Now, when I stay anywhere overnight, hotel, friend's house, doesn't matter. I check every window, every door. I wedge something under the doorknob, if I have to. Because once you wake up to the weight of another person in a room where nobody should be, and you can't see anything in the dark without your glasses, you don't forget it. You don't shrug it off. And you don't ever look at a barely cracked window the same way again. I've spent plenty of Thanksgivings alone in my truck doing late deliveries while everyone else posts pictures of turkey and family gatherings. So when my buddy Mitchell invited me to a Friendsgiving at a rural rental outside Des Moines, I said yes. Figured it'd beat eating gas station pizza at another rest stop. The place sat right next to an open field that used to be corn. By November, the stalks were mostly low stubble with random taller patches still standing along the edges, like somebody had given up harvesting halfway through. The house itself was warm. Windows glowing yellow, muffled football commentary coming through the glass. Inside, mismatched chairs, folding tables, kids running around, people laughing loudly. It felt good. We ate, joked about work, argued about questionable referee calls, the usual. Every now and then, I glanced through the back window at the field. Nothing out there except rows of dark plant remnants disappearing into a black tree line. The first time I heard it, I didn't treat it like anything significant. I was taking a trash bag out to the bin near the back porch. The wind was picking up, dragging the sound of the field with it, that dry, scraping noise of dead stalks rubbing together. Then, underneath all that, a faint hey. I stopped, not in a horror movie way, just listening. Could have been a neighbor out near the tree line. Could have been nothing. I tossed the trash and went back inside. Thought I heard someone yell, "Hey out there." I mentioned to Mitchell. He barely looked up. Neighbors mess around in the field sometimes. Bonfires, target practice, whatever. So I let it go. An hour later, the house had settled into that post-dinner haze. Leftovers cooling on the counter. Kids half asleep on couches. Football still murmuring in the background. That's when it happened again. Hello. Conversation cut off immediately. Forks paused. People looked around like the sound had come from inside the room. That wasn't the TV, someone said. The voice had come from the back of the house. Stretched, almost lazy, like someone calling from a distance but try and make sure you heard it. After a few seconds, everyone shrugged it off and went back to small talk. But now the laughter was thinner. The next call came maybe 10 minutes later. Closer this time. Hey! The hairs on my neck stood up. Not because it sounded scary, because it didn't. It sounded like someone testing out the tone you'd use to ask for help. Someone pulled the curtain back a couple inches. The porch light illuminated a small circle of grass. Beyond that, darkness. Field. Indistinct shapes of leftover stalks. Nothing moving. We all stared anyway. Rustling in the field picked up. Not in wide sweeps like wind, but in short, uneven bursts, like footsteps stopping and starting. Mitchell tried to brush it off. Could be a drunk neighbor, or a prank. Nobody really bought that. Then the voice came again, even closer. Hey, can you help me? The tone was wrong. No panic, no urgency. Just a soft, flat request. Like someone repeating a phrase they'd heard other people use. A few people exchanged looks. We should check, someone said. What if someone's hurt? I want to say that if someone's hurt, they don't hide in a field whispering at strangers. But instead, we ended up doing the stupid compromise. Not going out there, but stepping onto the porch with flashlights. Me, Mitchell, and another guy named Jordan grabbed 2 beams and went outside. The cold hit immediately. Porch boards creaked. The house behind us went quiet. Everyone watching through the glass. Hello? Mitchell called out. We hear you. Are you okay? Nothing at first. Then, from somewhere low to the ground, hidden in the stalks, hey! My flashlight swept across the field. For half a second, I caught something pale between 2 rows. Not a face exactly, but the shape of one, a curve of cheekbone catching a slice of light before dipping back down. I saw that, I said. Someone's crouched out there. Maybe they fell, Jordan said, moving forward a step. No, I said, putting a hand out to stop him. If they're hurt, they'd move toward the house, not stay low. The voice came again, sharper this time. Hey, come here. That was it. Every instinct from years of late-night rural deliveries lit up at once. This is wrong, I said quietly. We're not walking out there. Mitchell hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, let's call it in. We went back inside, locked the doors, and made a non-emergency call. The deputy arrived maybe 15 minutes later. His cruiser lights washed over the house. We watched him walk the edge of the field with his flashlight, calling out. No answer. When he came back, he told us he didn't see anyone, just a few trampled patches along the edge, like someone had been standing there, pacing back and forth. We all tried to go back to normal after he left, but the vibe was off. The field felt too big, the house too small, the wind too loud. I left earlier than I'd planned. Driving home, every time I passed another field, I braced for a voice to float out of it. Now, when I'm on a rural route at night, and I hear anything coming from the dark, a shout, a laugh, hey man, I don't move toward it anymore. I get back in the truck. I lock the doors. I stay in the light. Because what I realize at night is simple. People who really need help come closer. The ones who stay hidden in the dark while calling to you, they're waiting to see if you'll come closer to them. These stories remind us that danger doesn't always announce itself with broken glass and forced entry. Sometimes it hides in basements while you eat dinner. Sometimes it breathes on your window while the power's out. Sometimes it sits at the foot of your bed, waiting, and sometimes it calls to you from the darkness, hoping you'll be curious enough or compassionate enough to walk toward it. Stay alert, lock your doors, and if something feels wrong, trust that feeling.